He is family to me, Kevin. You are just some guy who came along later. That is what Chloe said to me, in a restaurant. In Newport Beach, while the guy she called family was still wiping my father's dignity off his smirk, and my mother was blinking back tears into her untouched halibut. I didn't yell, didn't flip the table, didn't give either of them the satisfaction of a scene bigger than the one they had already caused. I just nodded, set my credit card on the table for my family's portion only, and said, "All right then, good luck to the both of you." 2 weeks later, Chloe and her family sent me a letter from a lawyer demanding $10,000. They thought they were shaking down some quiet guy who would rather pay than fight. They didn't know about Arthur. Nobody ever knows about Arthur until it is too late. Hey, I am Kevin Mitchell, 29 years old, software developer at a tech company in Irvine, California. I am not flashy. I drive a Civic. I wear the same rotation of 5 button-downs to the office. I eat the same lunch turkey club. No tomato from the same deli 3 days a week, because it is good, and I don't see the point in fixing what works. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Middle class. Dad's a retired shop foreman at a brake parts manufacturer. Mom taught 3rd grade for 27 years. The kind of parents who drove a Camry until the odometer broke, who clipped coupons, not because they had to, but because wasting money felt morally wrong, and who raised 2 boys to say sir and madam, and mean it. My older brother, Arthur, is the family overachiever. 5 years older, Columbia Law, top of his class. Litigation partner at Whitfield, Haynes & Rowe in Manhattan, one of those firms where the lobby costs more than my apartment. Arthur argues cases in front of federal judges the way most people order coffee. Calm, precise, devastating. Growing up, Arthur was the guy who proofread my essays, taught me to tie a Windsor knot, and once drove 3 hours to pick me up from a party when I was 16, and too drunk to call our parents. Arthur doesn't fight. Arthur litigates. And he does it the way a surgeon operates sterile instruments. Bright lights. Zero mercy. But I am in California, and Arthur's in New York, and for the past 14 months, my life had been dominated not by family, but by a woman named Chloe Whitaker, 27, lifestyle content creator. Per her Instagram bio, which meant she posted photos of expensive meals and designer bags, with captions like "Living my truth." Her truth was mostly subsidized by my Amex. We met at a rooftop happy hour in Costa Mesa, white sundress, California golden hour. She laughed at my joke about parallel parking. It wasn't even good and touched my arm. "You are funny. Most tech guys are so boring." I should have heard the word most and understood what it meant. I was being ranked. But she smelled like coconut and bad decisions, and I was 28, and hadn't been touched since my last relationship ended with a sticky note on the fridge. So I took her to dinner. Then another, then brunch, which I learned, is just breakfast at a markup with a mandatory mimosa. Chloe's lifestyle ran on a simple engine. She liked nice things, and she liked people who provided them. New restaurants every weekend. Rodeo Drive window shopping that always ended with a bag. A weekend in Santa Barbara, because she had seen it on someone's story. My savings account started to flatten, then dip, then develop a slope like a ski run. I told myself it was normal. That relationships cost money. Hindsight is an accountant who always finds the discrepancy. Derek Lawson, 31. The best friend, the MBF. The 3 letters that should come with a warning label. Chloe mentioned him casually 4 months in. Derek and I go way back. College. He is like a brother. There it was. Brother. Family. The vocabulary of emotional armor. Derek worked in brand consulting, which meant he made PowerPoint decks for small businesses and charged too much. Leased BMW shirts, unbuttoned 1 button past appropriate. Wine opinions delivered with the confidence of someone who would read 1 article and memorize the adjectives. First time I met him was at a group dinner I was paying for. He shook my hand with an alpha grip squeeze that insecure guys think communicates strength. "So you are the boyfriend. Chloe talks about you. Good things, I hope. She says you are very stable." He said stable, the way a real estate agent says charming when describing a house with no closets. Over the next months, Derek became a fixture at dinners I paid for and events I planned. His favorite hobby was undermining me in deniable ways. "Kevin, buddy, you should try a tailor. Off the rack doesn't do you any favors. You work in tech? Must be nice sitting at a desk all day." Chloe deserves a guy who is spontaneous, No offense, Kev. But you are a planner. Every comment calibrated. Just casual enough to wave off. Just sharp enough to stick. Chloe never corrected him, not once. My parents flew out to California in the spring. First time visiting since I had moved to Orange County. Dad had been talking about it for months, the Pacific. Fresh fish, the boardwalk. Mom packed snacks for the flight, like she was provisioning a lunar mission. They weren't California people. Dad wore New Balance and a polo tucked into khakis. Mom had reading glasses on a chain, and a purse big enough to contain a small civilization. Midwest to the marrow, polite, unassuming, the kind of people who thank waiters by name and leave 25% tips because they work hard. I wanted to give them something special. So I made a reservation at Pelican Grill in Newport Beach. Waterfront, white tablecloths. The kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices. I told Chloe it was important. Just the four of us. Family, of course, babe. Family dinner. I get it. The night of the reservation, I picked up my parents. Dad had pressed his good shirt. Mom wore the pearl earrings my brother bought for her 60th. They looked like what they were. Decent people from Ohio in their best for their son's California dinner. We got to the restaurant. Table by the window, harbor view, sailboats, sunset, and then Chloe walked in with Derek. My stomach dropped about 2 inches. Not because I was surprised I was past surprise with Chloe, but because my parents were here. This was their night, and she had just brought a grenade to a dinner party. Hey babe! Chloe kissed my cheek and waved at the table. I ran into Derek on the way over, and he hadn't eaten. So I figured the more the merrier, right? Ran into him, at a restaurant in Newport Beach, on the exact night, and at the exact time of my parents' dinner. Right? Derek slid into the chair next to Chloe before I could object. Extended a hand to my father, Mr. Mitchell. Good to meet you. Kevin's told me so much about you. I hadn't told him anything. Because I would never willingly talk to Derek about my family. Because Derek knowing personal details about my parents felt like handing a toddler a lighter. My dad shook his hand. My mom smiled. Because that is what Mitchells do. We default to courtesy even when the situation doesn't deserve it. The first 20 minutes were fine. Stiff, but fine. My mom asked Chloe about her work. Chloe launched into her content creation monologue. My dad nodded politely through an explanation of engagement metrics and brand partnerships that I am fairly sure he understood about 12% of. And then Derek started. It began with the wine. My dad ordered a glass of the house red. Not the reserve, not the sommelier's pick. Just the house red, because my dad is a man who drinks what he likes and doesn't perform for an audience. Derek swirled his own glass a Napa Valley cab he had ordered with the reverence of someone auctioning a painting and said, House red, Mr. Mitchell, bold choice. I respect a man who knows what he wants, even if it is the bottom of the list. My dad chuckled, because he thought it was a joke. It wasn't Derek's second shot was at my mom. She was studying the menu, reading the descriptions out loud to my dad the way she had done at every restaurant since I was a kid. It was her thing, endearing, normal. That is adorable, Derek said, leaning toward Chloe with a stage whisper loud enough for the whole table. It is like watching someone visit a museum for the first time. Chloe covered her mouth, but I saw the laugh behind her hand. She didn't correct him. She enabled him. My mom's cheeks went pink. She closed the menu quietly. Derek kept going. My dad mentioned the factory where he had worked for 30 years, and Derek nodded with the practiced empathy of a man who doesn't know what empathy is. Manufacturing. Wow, that is very hands-on. Must be a different world from what Kevin does. I always wonder what it is like to work with your body instead of your brain. The table went quiet. My dad set down his fork. My mom looked at her lap. There it was. The line. Clear as a property boundary. Derek had looked at my father, a man who had worked 50-hour weeks, his entire adult life to put 2 sons through college, and implied he was stupid. In front of his wife, in front of his son, at a dinner his son was paying for, in a restaurant that cost more per entrée than my dad used to spend on groceries for a week. I felt my jaw tighten. My hands went flat on the tablecloth. The linen was cool and smooth under my palms, the kind of surface designed for civilized meals and measured conversation. Derek, I said. My voice was level. For now, that is my father you are talking to. Derek held up both hands. The universal gesture of fake innocence. Whoa, relax, Kev. I am just making conversation. No need to be so sensitive. Sensitive. He had insulted my parents to their faces, and my response was sensitive. Chloe jumped in. Babe, he is kidding. Derek's just like that? You know how he is? I know exactly how he is, Kevin. Come on. Don't make this weird, but Derek couldn't leave it. Some people have a self-preservation instinct. Derek had a self-destruction button, and he pressed it like a fidget toy. He leaned back, bourbon in hand, and grinned at my father. Look, Mr. Mitchell, no offense. I am just saying Kevin's done well for himself, considering where he came from. Not everyone makes it out of. He waved his hand vaguely. That world. That world. My parents' world. The world of alarm clocks at 5 a.m. and packed lunches and school, plays attended in work boots, because there wasn't time to change. The world that built me, I stood up. Not slowly, not dramatically, just stood up the way you stand up when something needs to happen, and sitting is no longer an option. Derek looked up at me. The grin was still there. The bourbon was still in his hand. The confidence was still on his face. Because in Derek's experience, guys like me don't do anything. Guys like me absorb, accommodate, take it. I hit him, one punch. Closed fist, right across the jaw. Clean, hard. The kind of punch you don't plan. The kind that comes from a place below thought, below strategy. From the part of you that is still a kid watching someone disrespect the people who raised you. Derek's head snapped sideways. The bourbon went airborne. He tipped backward in his chair, grabbed the edge of the tablecloth, and pulled half the place settings down with him as he hit the floor. Glasses shattered, silverware scattered. The sommelier's carefully curated breadbasket rolled under the next table. The restaurant went dead silent. 40 people holding forks in midair. Derek was on the ground, hand on his jaw, staring up at me with the expression of a man who had just learned that the quiet guy has a limit, and he had been doing cardio on the wrong side of it. And then Chloe did the thing that made everything clear. She didn't look at my parents, didn't check if they were okay, didn't ask why the man she supposedly loved had just snapped. She dropped to Derek's side, cradled his head, looked up at me with fury. Are you insane? What is wrong with you? She was on the floor next to him, hands on his face, checking his jaw like a medic. Derek, are you okay? Oh my God, Kevin. He is family to me. He is family, and you. You are just some guy who came along later. Family. There it was, the word she had been building toward for months, finally said out loud, on the floor of a Newport Beach restaurant, while my actual family sat at the table being invisible. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in 14 months, I saw clearly. This woman had just watched her boyfriend's parents get humiliated at their own dinner, and her instinct, her gut level, unfiltered instinct, was to protect the man who had done it. Derek was smirking. Even from the floor, even with a bruise blooming on his jaw, he was smirking, because in his mind, he had won. He had gotten the girl, exposed the stable boyfriend as violent. He would be the victim, and I would be the villain. I took a breath, felt my father's hand on my shoulder steady. Calm, the hand that taught me to throw a football, change a tire, shake a man's hand properly. Dad, Mom, let's go. I pulled my credit card from my wallet, set it on the table. That covers our portion. Everything else. I looked at Chloe, then at Derek. Is their problem? I turned to Chloe one more time. You said he is family, and I am just some guy. All right, I respect that. So here is what some guy is going to stop doing. Paying your rent, your car insurance, your credit card, your dinners, your content creation trips. All of it, done. Tonight, Chloe's face changed. The anger flickered into something else. Calculation. The rapid math of a woman realizing her income stream just got rerouted. Kevin, wait. Good luck to the both of you. You are going to need it. I put my arm around my mom. My dad picked up his jacket. We walked out of Pelican Grill, past the hostess, past the valet stand, into the salt air Newport Beach night. My mom was quiet in the car. My dad put his hand on my knee from the backseat and said, I am sorry that happened. Son, don't be sorry, Dad. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. We drove back to their hotel in silence, the good kind, the kind that says everything without saying anything. 2 weeks later, I got the letter, cream-colored envelope, certified mail. Return address from a law office in Costa Mesa that I had never heard of. Bradford and Associates, which turned out to be a solo practitioner named Gary Bradford who worked above a nail salon. The letter was 2 pages of legalese that boiled down to this. Derek Lawson was filing assault charges and pursuing a civil suit for damages. Physical injury, emotional distress, loss of income due to jaw pain. The demand, $10,000 to settle and make it go away. $10,000, the price tag on a punch that Derek had spent 4 months earning. I sat on my couch with the letter in my hands and felt the familiar tightness in my chest. Not anger, anxiety. The kind that comes when someone with a badge or a briefcase tells you you are in trouble, and your brain immediately starts calculating worst-case scenarios. I called my dad, read him the letter, waited for the worry, the concern, the parental panic. Instead, I got a chuckle, low, rumbling. The kind my dad makes when someone at the hardware store tries to sell him an extended warranty. Son, he said, those 2 idiots just poked the wrong family. Dad, I punched the guy. On camera, probably. In a restaurant full of witnesses. And he verbally assaulted your mother and me for 20 minutes in the same restaurant with the same cameras. You remember that part? I hadn't thought about it that way. Kevin, hang tight. I am calling your brother. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. The caller ID said Arthur Mitchell. I picked up, little brother. Arthur's voice had that particular quality it gets when he shifts from civilian mode to attorney mode, lower, slower. Each word placed like a brick. Dad told me everything. I have cleared my Thursday and Friday. I am flying to John Wayne Airport tomorrow morning. Don't talk to anyone. Don't respond to that letter. Don't even think about writing a check. I will handle this, Arthur. You don't have to, Kevin. He cut me off. Not rude. Final. Someone insulted our parents to their faces, and now they are trying to extort my little brother. I absolutely have to. This isn't a favor. This is Tuesday for me. He hung up. Arthur doesn't do long goodbyes. He does long depositions. Arthur landed at John Wayne Airport on a Thursday. I picked him up curbside. Charcoal suit that cost more than Derek's car payment. Leather briefcase with its own patina. Coffee from a place in the West Village that doesn't believe in branding. He looked like a man who would come to California to ruin someone's month. Drive me to the restaurant first. I need the security footage. We drove to Pelican Grill. Arthur walked in, introduced himself with a business card that had more embossing than a wedding invitation, and within 15 minutes had a full copy of the security footage. High definition. Wide angle. Clear as a courtroom exhibit. He watched it in the car. All of it. Derek's comments, my parents' faces, the punch, Chloe's reaction. When it ended, he closed his laptop. The punch was regrettable. I know, but legally manageable. Derek spent 22 minutes engaging in targeted verbal harassment of 2 elderly guests. Classist remarks. Derogatory comments about Dad's occupation. A statement that could be interpreted as intended to provoke. In California, that is provocation, doesn't excuse the battery, but it mitigates it significantly. So what is the play? Arthur smiled. Not a warm smile. The smile of a man about to disassemble something and enjoy every bolt we countersue. I will not bore you with every legal maneuver, because Arthur would explain it better and use Latin. But here is the summary. Arthur filed a countersuit against Derek for intentional infliction of emotional distress targeting my parents. The footage was the centerpiece. He also filed a motion to sanction Gary Bradford for filing a frivolous demand. In Arthur's words, the demand for $10,000 was a shakedown so transparent it would embarrass a parking meter. The hearing happened 6 weeks later. Arthur told me to stay home and do literally anything other than worrying. He called me afterward with the satisfaction of a pitcher recapping a no-hitter. Gary Bradford showed up with a 2-page brief and a tie knotted wrong. Arthur showed up with a 40-page filing, 3 case precedents, time-stamped footage, and a printed transcript with highlighted margin notes. The judge watched the footage. All of it. Derek's voice on the speakers. Manufacturing. That is very hands-on. The judge's expression didn't change, which Arthur said was worse than anger, because it meant she had already decided. Bradford argued battery and damages. Arthur presented the provocation defense with watchmaker precision, then pivoted to the countersuit. Intentional infliction of emotional distress against 2 private citizens who had traveled across the country to visit their son. Bradford objected 3 times, overruled all 3. The judge ruled, Derek's assault claim, dismissed. Footage showed sustained provocation, countersuit for emotional distress, Sustained, the judge called Derek's behavior calculated, cruel, and directed at vulnerable targets. Compensatory damages for my parents. Derek ordered to pay our filing fees. Motion to sanction Bradford. Granted, the judge called the original demand letter a transparent attempt at coercion dressed in legal letterhead. Derek walked out owing more than he had tried to squeeze from me. His lawyer's fees, my filing fees, damages, total north of $15,000. He came for 10 grand and left owing 50% more. The aftermath played out exactly how you would expect when you remove money from a relationship built on money. Without my credit card, Chloe's lifestyle hit a wall at highway speed. The restaurants downgraded. The shopping slowed. The content creation trips dried up because sunsets in Cabo are less photogenic when you are splitting a motel in Bakersfield. Derek, the sophisticated alternative to boring Kevin, was now sole financial provider for a woman whose quiet weekend required a $300 reservation and a new outfit. His brand consulting income buckled under Chloe's habits and the legal fees he owed. The reports trickled in. Arguments about money. Derek telling Chloe to cut back. Chloe saying he was supposed to provide. Derek pointing out he never signed up to replace my wallet. Chloe pointing out that he spent months undermining her relationship to have her. Final report. They broke up. Ugly. Chloe accused Derek of being just as boring as Kevin, but with worse credit. Derek called Chloe a financial parasite with a ring light. Both were right. Chloe's Instagram went quiet. Derek's LinkedIn updated to open to opportunities. The BMW went back to the dealership. A month after the court ruling, I flew to New York. Not for business, for family. Arthur picked me up at JFK in a black sedan his firm provided. We drove into Manhattan through the tunnel, and the skyline opened up the way it does, sudden, massive, indifferent to your problems. We went to a bar in the West Village. Arthur's spot, no sign on the door. Craft beer in proper glasses. Bartender knows your name. Arthur ordered 2 IPAs, slid one across. To the Mitchell Family Legal Defense Fund. I clinked his glass. How much do I owe you for all this? Kevin, I am serious flights. Filing, the hearing Kevin, the way only an older brother can say your name. Someone insulted mom and dad at a dinner you paid for. Then they tried to take your money for having the nerve to do something about it. He took a sip, set the glass down. I went to law school for a lot of reasons, but the main one was so nobody in this family ever has to sit at a table and take that treatment without recourse. That is what I do. That is what I am for. My throat tightened. You flew across the country, Arthur. Cleared your whole schedule. I cleared a Thursday and a Friday. Don't dramatize it. I had a deposition Monday that was way harder than Gary Bradford. I laughed. He laughed. The bartender refilled our glasses without being asked. We sat there for a while. 2 brothers from Columbus in a Manhattan bar. One builds software. One dismantles bad arguments. Both raised by a factory foreman and a 3rd-grade teacher who taught them that family isn't a word you throw around at restaurant tables to score points. Family is the guy who flies across the country because someone made your mom look at her lap. I finished my beer. The city hummed outside. Somewhere in California, 2 people who had tried to weaponize the legal system against a quiet guy from Ohio were splitting the check for the first time in their lives. And somewhere in this bar, a quiet guy from Ohio was buying his big brother another round. Same again? I asked. Same again, Arthur said. I flagged the bartender, the glasses refilled. The night settled around us like something earned. This is what family looks like. Not the word, the thing itself. And if you ever find yourself across the table from a Mitchell, I would recommend The House Red. It is perfectly fine. Just don't insult the people who raised us.